Welcome to Q&A for the day. Today's question is one which I've received on numerous occasions. We know according to Jewish law we're not allowed to eat meat and milk together. But this extends beyond just eating the meat and milk together. We also know we're supposed to wait between eating meat and then milk and then meat. So today's question is, for how long should we wait and why? Now, of course, there are lots of opinions, lots of complexities and in-depth discussions that you can have around this subject. Today I hope to provide a basic overview and understanding of these particular questions. So let's begin. The Babylonian sage Mar Ukva, we are told in the Talmud, he says when his father ate a meat meal, he wouldn't eat dairy until the very next day. But I, says Mar Ukva, I will have meat in one meal and I won't eat dairy until I sit in another meal. Now the Talmud doesn't go into express or explain how long was that time period between one meal and the next. So we have two major opinions as to how long we should wait and why. The first is Maimonides. Maimonides says we need to wait 6 hours after we eat meat till we have milk. And the reason he gives and suggests is because when you eat meat, the meat can get stuck between your teeth. And that takes about 6 hours for it to dissipate or not to be considered anymore halachic meat, where then you can then go and eat dairy products. Rashi, who's the other commentator, the other major opinion, says no. The reason why we wait 6 hours is because when you eat meat, the fatty residue gets stuck on your throat. And again, that takes about 6 hours for it to dissipate. And if you had to have dairy in between those 6 hours, it will then mix with the meat on your throat and of course be transgressing eating meat and milk together. We take the stringency of both these opinions and say that today we wait 6 hours, taking into account both Rashi and Maimonides and the Rambam's view. There is another opinion which says it's because of digestion. The Kreisi Places says it takes about 6 hours for the meal to digest. Interestingly, the Chassam Sofer, we are told, I read somewhere that he said, because of this reason of digestion, if you go to sleep, the meat would digest quicker and then you should be able to have milk after you've gotten up from your sleep. But it says that he wanted to sort of become a proponent of this view, but when he was drinking his coffee after waking up, the coffee spilt on him and he said, obviously this opinion is not accepted in heaven. Now in terms of that 6 hour wait, regarding obviously we said the meat in the teeth or the fatty residue on the throat, there are other traditions and customs like those from Germany and the Dutch traditions which wait a less amount of time, some 3 hours, some even an hour. Again, it's important to follow the opinion and the tradition that you've always followed, but as I said, the major halachic accepted opinion is waiting 6 hours for those reasons. Now what about the other way around, from dairy to meat? So given those three reasons of digestion and of course of the stuck between the teeth and the throat, dairy products have a very different component, a very different texture to meat. And so they wouldn't have those particular issues with getting stuck in your teeth and the residue on your throat. And so therefore, most opinions say you can wash your mouth out, and the Zohar does say we shouldn't have it within the same meal, and some would like to suggest, like Chabad, we should wait a whole hour, others say half an hour. But it's important to understand, based on those reasons given for meat, if the dairy product has the same texture or similar components to the meat, like a very thick and strong and powerful type of Parmesan cheese or Swiss cheese, which might in fact get stuck in your teeth and might in fact give you sort of a fatty residue, there are those opinions who say you also need to wait 6 hours from the dairy product to the meat product. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an understanding how long we wait, why we wait, and of course, as I said, with the varying different opinions, hopefully this gives you some insight. And of course, always happy to answer any questions, and you can also ask your local rabbi as well if you had any questions in this regard. Have a wonderful day and join us again for Q&A of the day. Welcome to Q&A for the day. Today's question is, perhaps you have done this yourself or seen it being done as well. When people visit a grave site, we see they take small pebbles or small stones and put it on the grave when they visit. And the question obviously is why? Why do we do this? What are the reasons behind this particular custom? Now, as always, there's going to be many different reasons, many different explanations. Today I'll share just a few of those with you to give you a better understanding behind the reasons for this particular minhag, this particular custom. Starting from the very basic reason, when people would visit a grave site, to go back in history, they would bring a pebble or bring a stone in a sense to ensure that it was maintained, to make sure that it was being noticed that there was a grave there, to alert people going by, perhaps like Kohanim, priests, to ensure that they knew that there was somebody buried there. Another reason, of course, is that we wanted to ensure that the person who's buried there, the soul, knows that people are visiting them. It's an honor to the deceased. And of course, when other people see stones placed by the gravesite, they'll say, this person has others visiting them, and it would show that they'd be interested to want to know more and learn more about the person when they lived in this world. Another reason, more Kabbalistic, our sages tell us that when somebody puts a stone by the gravesite, it almost serves as some type of invitation to the soul, a spark of the soul to come to that gravesite when the person is visiting and to remain there throughout the duration of the visit. A number of more harsher views as to the reasons behind it. When I say harsher, I guess a little bit more of a negative connotation. The Talmud tells us that if somebody was in their life had warranted to, God forbid, be deserving of stoning, biblical stoning or excommunication, we symbolically place a stone on top of their gravesite to say, if you were, God forbid, had warranted to be punished in this way, let this be your atonement. Let us putting a stone on top of you serve as this particular punishment. Another reason, it says that by visiting a gravesite and reading the inscription on the tombstone, it could have some undesirable consequences. And Kabbalah tells us that by placing the stone, it almost removes the undesirable consequences that could come from reading the inscription on the tombstone. A more beautiful reason, I saw somewhere, it says that the word soror, which is in Hebrew means pebble, we say when we stand by a gravesite, we say Tehei nishmato nishmatat surah b'tzror hachaim. May their soul be bound in the bond of eternal life. So by placing a stone, by placing a soror on the graveside, we're telling this person that yes, your memory, your actions, all the good things that you did in this world are continue to be bound in our lives by our actions, by our thoughts, by our memory of you. We're ensuring that you, in a sense, are living on. So by placing the stone, again, it brings a lot of comfort perhaps to the soul as well. One final idea is that we don't actually place flowers. Yes, I do see every now and again people placing flowers, but why we use a stone instead of a flower is because flowers, in a sense, represent the body. It looks beautiful, it's wonderful, it looks fresh, but of course we know that the flowers eventually will die. The body itself is like that. It looks beautiful when it's alive, it looks alive and animated, and of course a person passes away. A stone represents the soul. It continues to live on and on and on. It doesn't matter, it doesn't change, it continues to exist. And so we place a stone, in a sense, as one of our fundamental beliefs that the soul is really what truly exists. The body is just but temporary, and of course we have to do our utmost in our lives to ensure that we make the most of our time in this world, to do good deeds, to learn Torah, to do kind actions to others, and so on. And so by placing the stone, it reminds us of the eternity of the soul, the infinity of the soul, and of course the finite existence of our bodies. Hope that has given you a bit of an explanation as to the reasons behind this custom. Hopefully we only have simchas, and again, join me for another Q&A of the day. Welcome to Q&A of the day. We know that there are 613 commandments, 613 mitzvot that the Torah instructs us to follow. 10 of them are, of course, very famous, and then there are the rabbinic enactments as well. Now, if somebody who is not Jewish wants to follow these laws, wants to take upon themselves the laws of the Torah, there is, of course, a pathway. You can convert to Judaism and take upon yourself the responsibility and, of course, the privilege of fulfilling the 613 mitzvot of the Torah. But the question today is, are there laws which the Torah says are applicable to all of society, to all of mankind, universal laws? And the answer is yes. The Talmud does tell us that the Torah has 7 universal laws which apply to all of society. 7 universal laws which apply to all of mankind. These laws are supposed to be the pillars of our civilization, the pillars of society. If the world would follow these laws, we'd live in a much more harmonious and prosperous society than we know it today. Now, these laws are called the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, the 7 Noahide laws, based on the fact that Noah, in a sense, started the world again, started civilization again after the destruction of the world through the flood of Noah. Now, scholars who study these laws do explain that whilst they are 7 universal laws, you could look at these further and you could actually extrapolate around 66 laws which are based on these 7 laws. There are groups today called the B'nai Noach, the sons of Noach, who follow these laws religiously and try and spread them and encourage all of society to follow them. And in fact, it's upon all of us to try and encourage all of mankind and hopefully governments to understand and know these laws. And as I said, by fulfilling them, it will certainly bring a much more peaceful world than we know today. Now, these laws might seem obvious, but certainly if you think about it just for a little bit, you'll understand that sadly many of these laws are not fulfilled, are not applied across many of the nations that we know today. So I'll tell you these 7 as they are. Law number 1, do not murder. Now, of course, we can understand why a society where people murder each other cannot function properly. Law number 2, equally as well, do not steal from each other. Law number 3, do not worship false gods. Law number 4, do not be sexually immoral. A society needs to be one which is not sexually immoral. Law number 5, do not eat a limb removed from a live animal. Of course, this applies to not being cruel to both humans and animals alike. Law number 6, do not curse God. And finally, law number 7 is to set up court systems, righteous court systems, justice court systems, to ensure that those who do offend these laws are brought to justice. So these are the 7 laws that all of society needs to follow. And as I said, whilst they do seem obvious, certainly if we spread them across the world, if we ensured governments followed them, the world would be a much better place. Now, to end, Maimonides, the Rambam, does tell us that if any human being follows these laws, ensures that they keep to these laws, they are assured a place in heaven, that they will be rewarded for fulfilling these laws. So let's spread this message. Let's spread this universal message of peace and kindness. And of course, all these laws do, as I said, divide into subcategories, which will ensure society is a much, much better place that all of us can live in. Have a wonderful day, and please join me again for Q&A of the day.